What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to have a look at some new leaders. I've told you that the next two starter decks are going to be featuring Luffy and Yamato. The black starter deck is starter deck 8, featuring Luffy. The yellow starter deck is starter deck 9, featuring Yamato. And I told you at the time that it was weird, because starter deck 8 is a Luffy starter deck, and we knew that it had the Luffy leader, and yet for some reason it doesn't make a huge amount of sense, quite frankly. We've got on the front of the box a Luffy character. And I don't really understand why, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen. But I suppose it doesn't really matter. What matters is we finally do have the Luffy leader that we can have a little bit of a look at, and the Yamato leader, which, to be fair, was, on the front all the way along. Good. There are a couple of other cards that have been revealed that we will mention kind of while we're here, but let's face it, right? When we're talking about One Piece, it's a card game built around leaders, and in any card game built around leaders, new leaders are among the most exciting cards we're going to see. So let's start off. We might as well start off with Luffy, partly because people love Luffy, and partly because, 8 comes before 9. Now, both of these are mono-color leaders, and that means they have 5,000 power and 5 life. Edward Newgate is, remember, an exception. But as it stands at the moment, Edward Newgate is the only exception. That is a 6,000 power, 6 life leader. But remember, you have to pick up one of your life at the end of each turn, so that does whittle down very, very quickly. Outside of that, all the leaders we've seen have been, if they're monocolor, 5,000 power, 5 life. If they're dual color, 5,000 power, 4 life. And I'm delighted to say I did do these translations myself, though I did check with Orange Samurai D, who checked with Rice and Helio on the Discord. But I did do them myself, and I'm delighted about this. So what have we got? Well, Monkey D. Luffy here, on your turn, when a character is KO'd, give up to 1 rested Don to this leader. What is very, very important about this skill? It does not say once per turn. It does not say rest this leader and give it a rested Don. Or to put it another way, there is nothing in the wording here, and like I say, I translated this myself, I've checked the wording myself, there is nothing in the wording here to suggest that this is one time during your turn. What that means is that if you can KO multiple characters during your turn, you can have multiple rested Don being attached to Luffy on your turn. Now, it is to this leader, and that's very important. Obviously, there are parallels that can be drawn here with the first, not even the first Luffy, the first leader we ever saw. Starter deck 1 is the first leader, and that is Luffy, that activate main once per turn. Give this leader or one of your characters up to 1 rested Don card. And it is whenever you like. And it is this leader or one of your characters, but it very clearly says once per turn. And you don't need to be able to read Japanese. Just look. There is a second coloured bubble after activate main, but you have a look on the Luffy here, and you can very clearly see there's the blue bubble that says during your turn, Jibun no Tanchu, or, something vaguely along those lines. My pronunciation's not great, alright, but I can read it. But it says during your turn. That's all it says. So what that means is, if you can be KOing multiple characters during your turn, then you can be attaching multiple rested Don, and that's kind of huge. Because remember, that's what black cards do. They love lowering power and then just KOing because of the newly lowered power. Look at a card like Kazan. On your turn, all of your opponent's characters get -5 to their cost. And on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. So, pay 10 to play Kazan, and then all of your Don is rested, but one gets attached to Luffy with Kazan, and then, of course, we've got a billion other skills that we can use here to start KOing characters and attaching more rested Don. Monkey to Garp. Don X2, when attacking, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. and then give one of your rested Don to Luffy. And these are just examples, right? I'm not going to go through every black card that can do this stuff, because there's about 1 billion of them, and we're going to be here all day. My point, very simply, is that this is what black decks tend to do. They lower cost, and then they got a whole bunch of cards that can take advantage of that. Not always just KOing, but certainly KOing is something that a lot of these cards do. And that's kind of my point here. You can make a black deck that does that all day long. And when you're playing around with black decks that do that all day long, then all of a sudden you can be getting a whole bunch of extra rested Don on Luffy, and then Luffy becomes a crazy powerful leader, and then you got a big powerful leader with which you can swing, and I love it, ladies and gentlemen. I think this could be a very good leader. Now, in terms of other black cards, they showed off Shanks, but we looked at Shanks the other day. We don't need to worry too much about that. They also showed off the Big Whale, although it's not actually called the Big Whale, it's called Laboon. Yay! And as a fun little side note, they did show us this image a while ago, showcasing key art from the starter deck, and you can see that there is the Luffy character we looked at the other day. And there's also Laboon, and I adore the artwork on this Laboon card. And then there's another character that we haven't yet seen. But I kind of like it when we see this artwork, and then a little while later we see the card, and we're like, hey, that's where it fits. Laboon is just your ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill, standard vanilla character. 4 cost, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000, nothing terribly special, but it's there nonetheless. But then we've also got Nefertari Vivi here. Now, we've got a free cost, 1,000 power, counter plus 1,000, and sure, the power is very low, but this is one of those cards that a bunch of you could probably translate without even reading Japanese. Because you might recognise that the main skill here is clearly blocker, and you may recognise that there is a trigger that just says play this card. And I can confirm it's not discard a card from your hand and play this card or anything like that. It's just trigger, play this card. So, sure, it's an incredibly weak blocker. However, if the blocker appears in your life, then it's a blocker you get to play for free. And if you can play a blocker for free, that's a very, very, very good thing indeed. Now, moving over to yellow, we have got Yamato here. We've got 5 cost, 5,000 power. Like I said, monocolor leader, that is to be expected. Don X1, on your opponent's turn, while your life has 2 cards or fewer, this leader gains 1,000 power. And I'm going to be honest with you, I really like the Luffy, and I think Luffy could end up being top tier with the right deck build. Yamato is fine. But I don't like Yamato in the same way that I like Luffy. And I don't think that's mean. I hope that's not mean. And look, I'd love to be proven wrong. I'm all up for being proven wrong. The thing is, if we look at, say, Charlotte Katakuri from OP03, Don X1, when attacking, look at up to 1 life card from the top of your opponent's life area and put it on the top or bottom of the life. Then this leader gains 1,000 power. Now, to be fair, that is a Don X1 skill. Need to bear that in mind. But so's Yamato. Now, to be fair, it is an attacking skill, whereas Yamato is on your opponent's turn, which is very relevant. We'll get back there in a second. But I get to manipulate my opponent's life, i.e. if I see a good trigger on there, I get rid of it, and then I get 1,000 power and life is good. But I suppose the really relevant thing, and it is incredibly relevant, is that this is on your opponent's turn. And remember that on your opponent's turn, they need to basically attack and go through your leader in order to do damage and take your life. So the theory here essentially is that you have the extra 1,000 power, which means your opponent needs to have an extra 1,000 power on all of their attacks to get the attack through and do some damage. That's why this leader is good. That's why this leader has quite a lot of potential. But I still don't like it over a bunch of other leaders. And the theory essentially here is, I've got an extra 1,000 power, which means that you getting attacks through becomes way more difficult. But it's Don X1, and I've got to have 2 or fewer life, and I know that yellow can take its life. I know that there are a bunch of yellow cards that do that. The Charlotte Montdor from the starter deck. Activate main, you may rest this character and add the top or bottom card of your life area to your hand. KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. And we all know that, yellow does recovery here like yellow does recovery in Digimon. So yes, you can absolutely manipulate your life down to activate this skill. And yes, you absolutely can, manipulate your life back up again. That's what yellow does. But I'm not personally a huge fan of having to go down to 2 life just to activate the skill, and then hope my opponent doesn't punish me for having done so. I am not saying it's a bad leader, let's be 100% clear. Because there is absolutely a lot of potential here with the fact that you're gaining 1,000 power on your opponent's turn, which makes all of their attacks harder to go through you. I get that, I understand that. I just like other yellow leaders better. I personally prefer Luffy here, but I'm sure someone's going to make this Yamato broken, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. As for other characters here, there is a Kazuki Oden that we saw previously, so we don't really need to talk about. There is Kazuki Momonosuke, but it's a vanilla card, 2 cost, 4,000 power, counter plus 1,000, standard vanilla card. But there's also a Shinobu here. It's got blocker, which is quite nice, but it's a 3 cost, 2,000 power, it's a weak blocker, there must be something going on, and there is, because on block you may add to your hand 1 card from the top or bottom of your life, and then this character gains 4,000 power during the battle. So yes, you have to take 1 of your life, although remember, anytime you take 1 of your life, you do give yourself a card advantage. You have 1 more card in your hand, that is good. And it is worth pointing out that this also will help to activate a lot of those yellow skills like we see on Yamato. But you also get an extra 4,000 power, which puts you up to 6,000 power before you've started doing anything else. And you know what? As a blocker, that can be very, very handy for keeping you alive. So there we go. I promised you 2 new leaders, and I have delivered. These are new leaders. You should be excited. I'm excited, but I want to know how excited you are in the comment section. So go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord and chat with us, all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.